What's up everybody, Commander Sanctum here, and today we have a brand new deck tech using Eddie Brock. Eddie is a 3/3 human hero villain for 2 and a black that has, when Eddie enters, return target creature card with mana value 1 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and lets you pay 3 black-red to transform Eddie at sorcery speed into Venom, Lethal Protector. Venom is a 5/5 symbiote hero villain for 3 black-red that has Menace, Trample, Haste, and whenever Venom attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw X cards, then put a permanent card with mana value X or less from your hand onto the battlefield, where X is a sacrificed creature's mana value. Venom Lethal Protector is, in my opinion, the more interesting side of this commander, so we'll be focusing more so on him for this deck tech. Venom has an interesting build challenge. You could focus on multiple different strategies, such as aristocrats, enter abilities, big mana cards, card draw, and so on. For this deck tech, we'll be combining these different strategies into one cohesive and efficient engine. In fact, our big mana cards that we'll be focusing on will be ones that we can get onto the battlefield cheaper than normal, getting the full benefit of Venom's sacrifice ability without having to wait until later in the game to do so. With that, let's get into the card highlights. As I previously mentioned, we'll include a number of big mana creatures that can be cast for cheaper than usual, if certain parameters are met. These are going to be some of the best cards we have. We'll be able to get the full potential from Venom's ability, since it only cares about the actual mana value, while not having to wait or ramp super hard to have enough mana to actually cast them to begin with. Ghalta Primal Hunger is probably the best example of this, getting reduced in cost based on the power of creatures you have out. Needless to say, in such a deck like this, it'll be pretty easy to get his cost down to a simple 2 green mana, making it one of the most efficient creatures we have access to. Diamond Weapon and Molder Hulk work similarly in that they are reduced by 1 for each creature card in your graveyard, with the weapon taking this a step further by including any type of permanent instead. Due to Venom's ability, and the fact that we'll be sacrificing creatures pretty regularly, these restrictions will be easy enough to make both of these cards super cheap in most scenarios. Continuing with this theme, we have Primeval Protector and Ancient Stone Idol, the former being reduced based on the number of creatures all your opponents control, and the latter reduced based on the number of attacking creatures. The most interesting thing about Ancient Stone Idol is that it doesn't specify creatures attacking you. If one of your opponents is attacking another one of your opponents, you can still flash this in for a reduced cost, maybe even for free, depending on how many creatures are attacking. It also has a dies trigger, nearly replacing itself, making it a double whammy when it comes to Venom. A card based on one of the coolest cards ever made, we have Scion of Draco, which will reduce itself by 2 mana for each basic land type among lands you control. While this can only reduce itself by 6 in this deck, it's still a great enough reduction to warrant including. Not to mention, it also buffs up our other creatures with various keywords depending on their color, adding in a nice combat bonus as well. We also have a keyword introduced in Edge of Eternities that works very well with this overall cast for less strategy. This keyword is Warp. Warp lets you cast a card for a significant discount, just with the downside of having to exile it at the next end step. Since we're looking for fodder to sacrifice to Venom, however, this exile trigger will be less significant for us, since we can warp it in, attack with Venom, then sacrifice it before the end step. Anti-Causal Vestige, Germinating Worm, and Bygone Colossus are all such examples of creatures that have warp that we can get value out of. The Worm even has an enter ability, albeit one that isn't super great in Commander, and the Vestige has a very good Leaves ability, making it a great sacrificial target to Venom. Since we're big on sacrifice in this deck, why not include some creatures that give us some benefit when they die? To start out with, we have a cycle of legendary Kamigawa Dragon Spirits. Junji the Midnight Sky is a great reanimator in its own right. Kura the Boundless Sky can ramp you up some lands in cases where you're a bit low, and Atsushi the Blazing Sky can get you some extra temporary mana in the form of treasure or impulse draw you 2 cards. All of these dragons have abilities that shine in different situations, making them perfect sacrifice fodder. We also have a number of creatures that, when they die, will ramp out some lands. These cards are going to be crucial earlier in the game, since we may have to cast some of our bigger creatures for their full mana value to really start to get things going. Primal Druid and Viridian Emissary both cost 2 mana and ramp out a basic land when they die, while Yavimaya Elder costs 3 mana, but lets you tutor up 2 basic lands instead. While these creatures are cheaper in mana, they can still be good sacrifice fodder for Venom, in cases where you want to draw a few cards and get a few lands as well. Remember, just because you can't put a permanent from your hand onto the battlefield with Venom's ability, doesn't mean you shouldn't sacrifice the creature. The card draw alone is going to be good enough in most cases. To help make sure we can get as much value out of each creature as we can also use cards that just naturally reduce the cost of any creatures, or at least any creature that fits the criteria. Goreclaw, Terror of Kal Sisma will reduce any creature spell that has power 4 or greater, which is going to be quite a few of them in a deck where we're focused on high CMC creatures. Shadow in the Warp also reduces a creature by 2 mana, but only the first one each turn. This isn't too big of a downside, since we could just make sure to cast our highest CMC creature first, before moving on to others in the turn. Honest Rutstein reduces all creatures by 1 mana, regardless of power or how many you've cast, making it a great all-around option. He even has an ETB ability that works very well with Venom, since you'll be able to get a creature card that you previously sacrificed back into your hand to either recast and sacrifice again, or put onto the battlefield for free with Venom's ability. Since we'll naturally have creatures in the graveyard, since we're a pretty sacrifice-focused deck, Reanimation can be another strategy that we can tap into. Victimize is one of the more popular Reanimation effects, letting you get back 2 creatures for the small price of 3 mana in a 1 creature. Riveteer's Ascendancy is very similar to Venom's ability, though it brings a creature to the battlefield rather than to your hand. Zoo-Effete Osteoharmonist is another reanimation effect that, under normal circumstances, has a downside of making the returned creature have no abilities. However, for our purposes, this is irrelevant, since Venom's sacrifice effect only cares about its mana value, not any properties it may or may not have. Behold the Sinister Six is a great mass reanimation spell. Since Commander forces you to only use 1 copy of each card in most circumstances, the whole 6 different names is no downside at all for us. Malakir Rebirth is a great way to both immediately reanimate a sacrifice creature or protect Venom from being destroyed, since you can immediately bring him back if he were to be killed. Eternal Witness is only a pseudo-reanimate spell, since it doesn't bring it to the battlefield, and it can be more than just a creature. Still, the fact that Venom's ability puts a permanent from your hand onto the battlefield makes Eternal Witness an actual more beneficial include, since you can use it on a creature that you will then just immediately put onto the battlefield once Venom's ability triggers. Since the crux of this deck revolves around getting Venom's triggered ability, he'll likely be a big target for your opponents to disrupt your deck. Due to this, we'll need to make sure we include some spells that can help us protect him from removal. Tyvar's Stand and Tamiyo's Safekeeping both give a creature hexproof and indestructible, protecting Venom from the targeted removal or a destruction-based board wipe. Heroic Intervention also gives hexproof and indestructible, but to all your creatures instead of just 1. This one is the perfect card to cast when an opponent taps to board wipe, normally killing all your opponent's creatures while keeping yours intact. Revitalizing Repast and Strength of Will are additional protection spells that only give a creature indestructible, but can also permanently buff them with +1/+1 counters. While this isn't going to always be super relevant with Venom, it is nice to have a larger and more durable creature, since we need to attack with Venom every turn in order for his effect to actually trigger. Finally, there are some good utility cards that work well with their overall themes and strategies. Solemn Simulacrum is one of the quintessential sacrifice targets, since it ramps you a land when it enters, and then draws you a card when it dies, both things you want to be doing as much as possible. Sneak Attack is another way to cheat out one of your bigger creatures that you want to sacrifice to Venom's ability. You'd have to sacrifice it regardless, thanks to Sneak Attack's claws, so why not get a ton of cards and potentially another creature out of the deal? Speaking of getting more cards and creatures, Strionic Resonator is a great way to do this, since it'll let you double Venom's triggered effect, getting you double the cards, and potentially double the permanents from a single sacrifice. Marin of Clan Neltoth is another one of those creatures, and commanders, that excels at sacrifice and reanimation shenanigans. She's actually even better in this deck, since Venom's triggered ability puts a creature from your hand onto the battlefield. If you don't have enough experience counters to outright reanimate a creature, you'll still be able to get it out for free, under certain circumstances, on the next turn thanks to Venom's ability. The Skullspore Nexus is a great way to maintain a sizable army, even through all the sacrifices that you'll do. While you can't gain any benefit from sacrificing the tokens to Venom, since they have no CMC, you'll still be able to build up a sizable army over time that can help you close out the game. Disciple of Bolas can be a great alternative to get some quick cards in life in cases where Venom is being consistently killed or countered. It's also a great way to get another sacrifice off in a turn, since you'll be limited to 1 with Venom's ability. Korvold Fey-Cursed King is another way to get more consistent sacrifices, but even better than that, he'll give you even more cards whenever you sacrifice a permanent, while simultaneously getting bigger himself. It's truly a win-win with Korvold in a deck like this. For more utility-style sacrifice effects, we have Anger, which excels when it's in the graveyard, since it'll give all your creatures that you play haste. Protean Hulk is a great way to search up some smaller creatures when it dies, or one bigger one, and getting them onto the battlefield for free. And yes, while Protean Hulk is commonly used to search up infinite combo pieces, there will be no such cards in this deck, making it more of a fair Hulk than people usually see. Here's an example deck list utilizing all the previously mentioned cards. Additional cards include more reanimation effects with the namesake of the strategy, Reanimate, some lands that help with Venom attacking in Rogue's Passage and Kessig Wolfrun, and plenty of ramp with cards like Cultivate, 3 Visits, and Farseek. While Eddie Brock himself gets pretty much no love in this deck, I do think that Venom is going to be quite the lethal commander in his own right. Honestly, even if Venom's sacrifice ability only gave you the card draw, it'd be pretty powerful already, but the fact that you can then play a permanent for free really takes it over the top. And while this deck focuses more so on creatures, it really is any permanent, making the possibilities for deck building pretty much endless. Honestly, there's so much going on with Venom's side that the deck can truly be taken in quite a few different directions. Not only that, but the Eddie Brock side himself can make for a completely different type of deck as well. That's what I really love to see in Commanders. Ones that can be built in many different ways and many different strategies, rather than one narrowly focused one that a lot of Commanders basically force. As far as power level goes, I do think Venom is going to be quite a contender in games and definitely one to watch out for. That being said, I am interested to see how people will build the Eddie side of things, as his restrictive reanimation effect seems like a fun, though not quite as strong, build around. Regardless, if you love commanders that can draw you a ton of cards, sacrifice creatures, or even just be built in many different ways, then Eddie Brock and Venom Lethal Protector is for you. I hope you enjoyed watching this deck tech on Eddie Brock and Venom Lethal Protector. The full deck list outlined in this video can be found at the Archideck link at the top of the description. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like and comment, as well as subscribe to the channel for more Magic content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.